These are the fingerprints of Chen Du-shu, the first General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. In the archives of the International Settlement, there are many files like this with the fingerprints of early communists. That was how they were registered by the police when they were arrested. Some spent years in prison, others lost their lives as they sought to change China. Not by spreading new ideas, but by trying to put them into practice. The first foreign concession in Shanghai was established under the Treaty of Nanjing, signed by China and Britain in 1842. It was known as Unequal Treaty because the British imposed it on China by force at the end of the First Opium War. The concession had its own administration, tax authorities and police, all completely outside the Chinese government's jurisdiction. It set the pattern for Shanghai for the next 100 years, a foreign-ruled enclave existing in the heart of the Chinese city. After new youth started appearing, the police and their informers in the French part of the concession took a special interest in a house at number 2 Yuyanli Lane. This was where Chen Du-shu lived. It also served as the magazine's editorial office. According to the police daily report sheet of April the 20th, 1920, Chen was planning to organize a big workers' demonstration for May Day that year. The police report urged the authorities to be vigilant. New Youth already had a reputation for propagating Marxist ideas, but Chen soon took matters a step further. The following month, he established a Marxist Study Society, the seedbed of the future Communist Party. Many of the magazine's contributors became members. They included a young literary scholar named Li Hanjun. To the British consulate and the French concession police, Li was what was known as a person of interest. He was very close to Chen, he had links with Sun Yat-sen, and the police informers reported that he was often seen in the company of Japanese, Koreans and Russians, discussing whether and how it might be possible to build socialism in China, a topic of keen interest to the city's progressive intellectuals. One of those Russians had arrived in Shanghai a month earlier under the guise of being a news agency correspondent. His name was Grigory Naumovich Voitinsky. Voitinsky worked for the Far Eastern Bureau of the Soviet Comintern in Vladivostok. He'd been sent to China that April to make contact with Chen and his colleagues and help them develop a communist movement. The Bolshevik leaders in Moscow were internationalists. They believed that after the victory of the October Revolution, other countries would follow suit. Besides, China and Russia shared a long common border. A strong communist party in China would be in Russia's national interests. With Voitinsky's help that summer, alongside the Marxist Study Society, Chen established a formal communist group, the first anywhere in China. That was a major change. No longer were the Shanghai Marxists simply holding academic discussions, they'd taken the first crucial step towards forming a political organization. In April, when Voitinsky arrived in Shanghai, Chen had been busy editing a special May Day edition of New Youth. It was a double number, 400 pages long, and carried the full text of the so-called Karakhan Declaration, in which the Bolsheviks renounced Russia's extraterritorial rights in China and repudiated the unequal treaties. The declaration provoked great enthusiasm in China and fascination with the communist regime in Moscow, which had proclaimed it. While the Western powers were clinging to their privileges, here were the Russians announcing that they were giving them up. Perhaps the Soviet way was the model for China to follow. It was during this time that Voitinsky and other Soviet envoys reached Shanghai, bringing what seemed to be answers to the questions that Chinese intellectuals had been grappling with. The time had come to establish a formally constituted Communist Party. The setting up of the communist group in Shanghai was soon emulated elsewhere. Chen Duxiu wrote to Mao Zedong in Changsha and urged him to form a branch of the Socialist Youth League. Mao's closest friend, Tsai He-sen, wrote to him from France, arguing that Marxism was the answer to China's problems and that the country needed a communist party. Mao agreed. An informal communist group was established in Changsha soon after. In July 1921, delegates to the First National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party met in Shanghai and approved two key documents. The party's program, which laid down that it was to be a proletarian party with a mission to overthrow the bourgeoisie and rebuild the country through the efforts of the working class, and a resolution stating that one of its basic tasks was to establish labor unions to mobilize industrial workers as the party's core support. That first Congress is widely seen in China as marking the start of a new era. In a sense, it's appropriate that this building over here, where it was held, is right in the middle of a district that's now home to another Shanghai landmark, the New World Entertainment Complex. How so, you may ask? Well, if you think back, the dream of those young men who founded the Chinese Communist Party was to end poverty and backwardness and make China strong, allowing the Chinese people to live in dignity, to have happy, fulfilled lives, and yes, to enjoy themselves. To the party's founders, there was no contradiction there. And so the early Communist Party members put aside their scholars' gowns and newfangled Western suits and went out among the factory workers in the textile plants of northern Shanghai and among the stevedores on the piers along the Huangpu River to win followers and to start putting into practice their vision of what China should become.